Good evening and welcome to the first MCCPTA Presents of the school year. My name is Erin Clegg and I'm your MCCPTA Vice President of Programs. And tonight I'm very excited to introduce Brad Shear, who will be sharing more on how and why we should be limiting our digital footprint. He's a local attorney, the founder of Digital Armor, and also the leading authority on how colleges and employers are utilizing applicants' social media profiles. Please help me by welcoming Brad Shear.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you to Lynn Harris of MCCPTA and Tracy Potts for making sure that the information was on the website. Erin, that was a very kind introduction. The people here in the audience, if you can, I'd love for you to maybe put down on a piece of paper if you've ever posted something online that you've ever regretted, or maybe your child has posted something online. And also, if there's any websites that you've ever visited that you don't want other people to know about, I wish you could put it on a card. Promise, do not put your name on it, and I'd like to be able to discuss that during the presentation or thereafter. So let me start the presentation. Let me move forward. So tonight we're going to talk about creating a positive digital footprint, so that way your son or daughter can succeed when they're applying to colleges and also for the job market. So what I want to really focus on is the feeling is that we're going to develop digital life skills while also with MCCPTAs, it's about educating and empowering our community, also while protecting them and fundraising. I think this should be a win-win type of situation for our families, because my feeling is that as a parent in the system, I think we should utilize all our resources to work together to make sure that our kids have the information they need to succeed. Now, Erin had mentioned some of the things that I've done in the past. I've also started something called National Student Data Deletion Day, and I've worked with the Safe Tech Committee here. I'm not here on behalf of the Safe Tech Committee, but under the leadership of Asia Pascal and Lisa Klein, they've done fantastic work, and also Sunil Dasgupta. They've done great work in trying to make sure that our kids are protected in the digital space. So I'm a dad. I have 2 kids in the system. Also, I focus on social media and technology issues in my law and consulting practice. And what I've done in the past is I'm the person, when I heard that colleges and employers were demanding that students turn over access to their personal social media accounts, I was the one that stood up and said, no, we can't do that. And I went to the state legislature and I made sure that our state of Maryland passed a law that would ban that practice. And since then, approximately 25 states, 26 states have done the same. But the problem is that when our kids apply to schools outside of the state of Maryland, they're not protected. And to try to get around these types of protections, colleges are now doing some very troubling things, such as tracking our kids' internet search history to then discriminate against our kids and reject them. And that's something that I find very appalling and very troubling, and that's what I try to help people ensure that that doesn't happen to them and their families. Now, a little bit more about myself. I'm regularly quoted in the media, and I'm also trusted by a wide range of different organizations. It doesn't matter whether it's CNN or Fox News. If you're a Republican or Democrat, I don't care. The type of information I provide is nonpartisan and non-political. It goes through both the people on the left and people on the right. I protect everybody, so that's just something that I think is very important, especially in this day and age with how politically charged everything is especially on the digital space, because most of the things that I see right now, kids are getting in trouble for talking about politics online and reposting things that they've seen, and that's where colleges are really starting to get very, it's what they're doing, and they're cracking down on what kids are saying and doing online, and they're using it against them, unfortunately. Now, the 3 main things I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm going to talk about why we really need to make sure that our kids limit their digital footprint, how they can do it, and if they're able to reverse any damage that's been done already by them posting things online or by the websites that they visited online, and how that information is then being used to basically reject our kids and discriminate our kids and our families here in this area. If anyone has any questions during the presentation, feel free to chime in, and feel free to say, hey, Brad, can you better explain something, or can you just go over something or provide more information? I'm more than happy to do it. Just make sure that you raise your hand so I can see it. Now, how many people here do not have a smartphone? Okay, Perfect, because everyone in here has a smartphone according to what this unscientific question was. I have a smartphone too, like everyone else, and approximately 95% of our kids have access to some type of mobile or digital device. That's a staggering number. And of those who do, the most popular apps out there, number 1 is YouTube, number 2 is Instagram, number 3 is Snapchat, and a distant fourth is Facebook. So we need to make sure that our kids understand why it's so important that they limit their digital footprint, because all the information they're posting on all these platforms is being sold to data brokers and being repurposed for in ways that they never envisioned or imagined. Now, how many people here read the New York Times or Washington Post? Most of the people here, great. Okay, well, several years back, there was an article I worked on with one of their reporters to try to get the word out that colleges are basically going around and they're doing this. They're reading our kids' tweets, they're reading our kids' digital information, and the problem is that kids don't know about it, and colleges don't want to admit what's happening. In fact, for this article that was written by the New York Times, most of the colleges that were contacted did not want to discuss what they're doing, how they're doing it, and whether or not colleges are actually taking action against kids for small little infractions or things that someone on the admissions committee may have deemed inappropriate, or they may have deemed something that they just don't like. And the colleges, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit what they're doing. And that's a big problem. That's something that our community needs to know about, because I've represented kids in a whole bunch of our high schools that have been accused of inappropriate digital behavior, both in the private school sector and also in the public school sector. And a lot of these kids don't understand how invasive colleges are being. And it's not just the colleges are scanning things, it's also frenemies. What's going on is that you have some instances where you have someone who was friends with somebody, and they saw that someone posted something that was potentially inappropriate, or maybe that was joking. They've taken a screenshot, put it in their back pocket, and then months down the road, after they found out that this person got into their dream college, then they've sent it to that dream college, and then the young person has then been confronted. Hey, did you post something online? As soon as the kid says yes, the college then revokes the offer and or revokes the scholarship. And this is happening more and more in our community. And that's something that just should not be, especially for our young people. They should be able to have a second and third chance to do dumb things. I was a kid once, just like everyone else in here, and our kids deserve the chance to be kids and to learn from their mistakes. And that's why I advocate, and that's why I offer the services that I do, and that's why I've been working diligently with MCCPTA under their Safe Tech Committee to make sure that our kids are properly protected. Now, this is something new. It actually was in the Wall Street Journal last week. Has anyone here ever heard of social media sentiment analysis? Okay. What that is, it's not just whether or not you post something that is potentially inappropriate or it's something that someone may not like. It's also who you're connected with, what times of the day you post, your syntax, the different profiles that you actually have created, who you're connecting with, the types of things that you're actually saying, the GIFs that you're posting online, the memes, the emojis. It's all the small little details that are being posted on these profiles. Now some colleges and some employers are taking that information and trying to figure out whether or not you're going to be a successful candidate. And this is going to extreme. This is very Orwellian and very dystopian. And this is not something that families have any clue that's going on. This is not just inappropriateness or someone posts something that's potentially racist or anti-Semitic or just downright disgusting. It's, well, the type of behavior is focused on what times that they posted, as I said before, but also how many times that they've posted, whether they have incorrect grammar. And so colleges and employers are starting to try to figure out, well, how can we use that to try to dictate who we're going to hire and who we're going to have in our company, and also who we're going to allow into our schools. And that's a growing major problem.
Brad, I have a question.
Sure.
Do they quantify the amount of time someone's online? Like, is it, clearly it's profiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do they look at, this candidate, it seems to be on 8.5 hours a day, must have an addiction to social media? Or can they extrapolate the specific amount
That's a great question. It depends on what type of service or scanning that the college is doing. I'll give you a perfect example. There's some families that actually hire companies to basically babysit their kids on their smartphones. And there's been several times in the last year where some of these companies that are actually tracking what these kids are doing for parents, I'm not talking about the schools, they've been hacked and the data has been leaked and the data has been sold. So exactly how specific the scanning is, it just depends on what type of program that the college is using and what type of program an employer is using. This stuff sounds very Orwellian, and it is, but this is where we're moving. We're moving into a future where if you don't protect your privacy, that means you don't protect your safety, you don't protect your future, because what companies know about you and how they're using that information, they're not using it to help you get into college. Companies are using this and colleges are using this to reject you and discriminate, plain and simple. There's never been a case where someone has said, oh my God, I've had this beautiful, robust digital profile, and because of that, Harvard let me in. That has never happened, and it never will because of the digital equity issue. What has happened time and time again, because kids have not all kids, but some kids have robust digital profiles, colleges are then dinging them based upon the fact that there might be something that a college doesn't like. And it's not just in that aspect, it's also Instagram influencers. I've had some issues where I had a young woman who was an Instagram influencer, and the problem was that they interview her, and it's usually interviewers who are going to schools or actually going to the home when they're outside of the college atmosphere, but when it's an alumni interview that's actually visiting the student on their home turf, or the student is actually going to the family, what's happening is that there's a lot of inappropriate questions being asked, but they're very subtle. And in this one instance, the interviewer was actually focused on the fact that this young woman was in a lot of scantily clad things because she was actually being an influencer for bathing suits and sunwear and different types of things that were for sun. And so it's not just so-called inappropriate postings. It's also the fact that, hey, look, I just don't like the fact that this person, their aura that they've put out there online, just I don't like it. And that's how kids are being, unfortunately, discriminated against. Yes?
This may not be the right place in your presentation to address that, but how about the opposite? What if you protect your privacy and then you become less visible?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody told me was looking for a person, and that person, they couldn't find a whole lot. This person's private, doesn't have social media accounts, so somebody reported that they're probably engaged in tax evasion because they cannot find like social media profiles. So what would you advise on that?
Right.
It looks like we have to fake some kind of presence, or the kids have to fake some kind of presence, or have very disciplined presence, but no presence whatsoever might also be held against them.
I've never had a situation where in the college space, there's never been a documented instance where a kid was rejected because they didn't have a social media presence. Never has, and I guarantee this, there never will be, because of the fact that when it comes to this stuff, if a kid has sent into a college, they have top grades, top SAT scores, top recommendations, and fantastic activities. They have a very minimal presence. College is not going to ding somebody because they haven't said a lot of things online and don't have this robust Instagram account. And that would be actually discriminatory if they tried to do it. And that's something that I've never seen that happen, and I can't imagine that ever happening. If you want to get employed and you want to have a LinkedIn account, have some type of presence, I highly recommend having a LinkedIn account. However, I recommend having a private LinkedIn account, meaning that you can't just search for someone online and find all of their personal information. I'll give you an example. I forget the congressman's name, but this happened earlier this year, or I think it was either earlier this year or last year, where someone in New Jersey, they were a lawyer, they worked for a bank, and what they did was they were a political activist. And the thing was, the sitting congressman didn't like the fact that this person was basically advocating against their policies. And The only thing you could find out online about this person was the fact that they were advocating for more openness for their Congress member and for the congressman to go around and hold town hall meetings. But nowhere did this person say where they worked and provided that type of personal information. However, the one place that they did, they had a LinkedIn account. And so the political operatives for that congressman ended up finding that LinkedIn account, reached out to her employer at the bank. I'll be happy to send you a link to the article. It's a New York NPR article that discusses how this woman ended up having to leave her job because once they found out where she worked, they told her boss and it became very uncomfortable for her. And this was a woman who was a lawyer who was not mixing her professional with her personal life. So that's the danger of having things out there if you want to then be politically active. People will reach out to your employer and try to get you fired. And it's not posting anything negative or post it being inappropriate. It's just that that's the type of situation we're in this day and age. Okay, so now more. Colleges are spying against kids across the internet. Well, it's not just spying against them. It's not just throwing web bugs into emails. It's actually physically following them all across the internet. And that's a very big problem, especially, for example, for Harvard. And Harvard has done this quite a bit. In fact, what they do is they put web bugs into emails, and they try to figure out what a student's private or Finsta or fake Instagram account is. And I have proof of that because I ended up getting the Harvard application emails last year, and in there it says, please connect with us on Snapchat, and then it has a web bug or beacon inside the email trying to figure out what my private or Finsta account is. So this is the lengths at which colleges will go to try to figure out what your so-called secret or private personal life is. So this is more on Harvard, but to give you guys a better idea of how invasive some of the questioning is, I had a situation this past cycle where a student went to the college interview. It was an alumni interview, and what happened was that the interviewer was so focused on who this person followed on Twitter. Person had nothing inappropriate, nothing derogatory, nothing negative that they posted. All they did was follow Alex Jones. For those of you who don't know who Alex Jones is, he's a far-right political commentator. I like to keep politics out of my presentations, but he believed the student had a lot of beliefs, didn't post any of his beliefs, but the student followed a lot of conservative people. He also followed some liberal people. But what happened was that during the interview, the interviewer was so focused on the fact that he was following Alex Jones. And instead of talking about this kid's stellar grades, their phenomenal extracurriculars, their unbelievable SAT scores, the interviewer focused on this one aspect. This, to me, was insane. So the parents reached out to me, and they said, hey, Brad, this is a problem. What can you do? So I reached out to the school and made sure that the issue was resolved. But this kid was going to be rejected from the school based on the fact that he was just following a certain person online, not reposting what this person was saying or posting anything derogatory or negative, just by the fact that this person was following someone who the interviewer did not like. And I find that very troubling because in our country, there's no way that people should be discriminated against just for their beliefs. But that's what's happening in this day and age. And for example, for Harvard, what Harvard did last year was that they revoked offers from at least 10 kids because somebody complained and said they didn't like the fact that some of these kids were posting some things that were allegedly inappropriate. And what Harvard did was they went back to, they reached out to these 10 plus kids and said, look, you have 24 hours, you need to fess up to what you posted, and if you want to stay a member of the incoming class. Every single kid that was honest and said, you know what, I posted it, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have posted something. And these were memes. Those, you know, they were images online. Sometimes they were, in some instances, they may have been some messages. But they were very minimal, it was very minimal online postings. And every single kid that said, yes, I posted it, Harvard revoked the offer. Kids who did not admit, and I can't tell you how I know, but kids who did not admit to the fact that they posted it, there in Harvard right now. Yes? Well, Harvard is a private institution, and that's a very good question. For the last 5 years, Harvard and a whole bunch of institutions in Massachusetts have lobbied against a state law that would ban them from even asking these kids what their social media account information is. And so Harvard is spending a lot of money, along with a bunch of other schools. In fact, in the state of Maryland, the colleges lobbied very heavily to try to block a law that would ban them from being able to ask for verification of a student's social media handles. Bill was first introduced, we introduced it in 2012. It wasn't until 2015 that it actually was enacted, because colleges want access to this. They want to be able to discriminate against their kids. They want to be able to reject their kids. I'll give you a perfect example. Stevenson University. It's a private university in Baltimore County, near where I grew up. And so what they did was they were using a program that's tracking kids all across the internet. I wrote a Baltimore Sun op-ed piece that I have over on the table, and in there's a link to Stevenson University. If you click on that, one of the links to them, you'll see that now it's a 404 broken or missing link, because I linked to the fact that they were using a company that was tracking kids across the internet. As soon as that was printed, within a week, they made sure that that link was disabled, because they didn't want the entire world knowing that they were tracking their applicants across the internet. So in this day and age, unfortunately, a lot of schools are thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't have free speech for whatever reason. I'm a big believer in freedom of speech. I believe whatever your beliefs are, whether they're on the right or the left, I don't care. You have that right to believe that. And but a lot of people that are making decisions when it comes to colleges and when it comes to employment don't have that belief. That's why it's very imperative for our kids to really learn how to limit their digital footprint. So this is something else. This is another very interesting article. It really focuses on the fact that the apps that our kids are using in schools, even in MCPS, some of them are actually taking that information. It's being used for marketing purposes. And so that's why the Safe Tech Committee is doing a lot of very great work in trying to make sure that the apps that are doing this, they aren't doing it anymore, or they're not going to be terrorizing or preying on our kids, because there's apps out there that the terms of service and privacy policy enable them to sell our kids' personal information to marketers and to data brokers and to whomever else who wants to have access to it. So in fact, there's even a lawsuit going on right now. The ACT, one of the two major tests that our kids are taking in college, is being sued for discriminating against those who are taking the test. And if you take a look, some of the information that they request that applicants put on when you're taking the test, it comes down to they want to know what your religion is and whether you have a physical learning disability. Now, I've never heard of a college saying, you know what, we want to have more of someone of a certain religion, or we want to have more of someone who has a certain learning disability. No, colleges want that information for one reason and one reason only, to reject kids. And that's why there's a lawsuit going on, because of the fact that this is discriminatory, and it's not fair, and it's hurting our kids. And that's why I'm so very fired up when I hear about these types of things, because it's an ongoing problem. This is another slide. This talks about how Google was caught scanning student emails a couple years ago for advertising and commercial purposes. So this is something that is real. It's happening, and every parent in our community needs to understand how to protect our kids and how to ensure that our kids' personal information is constantly and regularly deleted. That's why I've worked with our Safe Tech Committee, and we're working with the MCPS to try to implement some type of version of what I call Student National Data Deletion Day that helps delete a lot of the superfluous information that's being collected on our kids. For example, does anyone here think that whatever our kids are searching in school online should be tied to them forever? Does anyone think that? No, exactly. That's how I believe. The things that our kids are searching for while they're in school should not be tied to them forever. Our kids are trying to learn. They're trying to figure out what works best for them, and they're trying to learn about controversial topics and issues that are very that are sexual in nature. For example, in the county, we just had there's the condoms that are being given out now. Okay, sexual health, those types of things. Our kids need to learn about these things, and they should not be used against them just because they want to find out and learn. Sure. Sure. That is that's a personal family decision. Sure, I'm sorry.
It's just, would you recommend that the students not complete the demographic information? Because this week and or next week, they're doing the ACTs in school.
That's an excellent question. The SAT and ACT actually sell the information that you're giving to them. I can't tell you exactly what you should do for your family, but when my kids take those exams, I'm going to advise them not to provide that information, because there is no way, shape, or form when a survey says, hey, if you fill out this information, we're going to help connect you to a better scholarship. That's a lie. What these companies are doing, they're selling our kids' personal information for profit. There was a really good Washington Post article last year that discussed all the different data points that the SAT is collecting and the fact that that information is then being sold. And so whatever works best for your family, and that's just a personal decision that each and every family needs to make on their own. Sure.
You're going to have the option. We met yesterday with the chief technology officer and the chief legal counsel, and they are slowly buckling down on these things. And one of the things I believe that's going to be happening this year, this month, is that you're going to have a choice on the ACT and then the SAT to opt out of providing personal information. Now, what that will do, as I understand it, it'll close some doors in terms of scholarship information that you receive, but there are other ways to get that information. So that, and also Naviance is going through a little bit of a change where families will be able to opt out of supplying personal identifying information. And there will be forms handed out in school for that, probably tomorrow on that.
Thank you, Lisa. This is another slide. This talks about how states are starting to understand these issues. For example, the New Mexico Attorney General is suing Google and Twitter, and the state of Mississippi is suing Google for scanning student emails. What's happening is that all of a sudden, lawmakers and regulators are starting to realize that a lot of these companies who create fantastic tech, which I love, well, they're not being honest with how they're abusing our personal information and how they're selling our personal information and how this information is then being used to discriminate against our kids and our families. And so that's just something to be aware of. Also, the FBI, I mean, I couldn't have timed this better. The FBI came out last week with a warning about a bunch of the digital apps that are being used in our schools. The fact that, hey, look, these apps, they're collecting information, and that information may be utilized against you. It's hard to see in the screen, but basically it comes down to it's your internet search history, it's biometric data, it's all sorts of little data points that you might not have thought would be a big deal, but the fact is you can tell a lot about a person based upon what websites they visit online and what different digital profiles that they actually utilize. Black Lives Matters and other political movements. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter got in trouble for taking that information and then selling it to third parties. They were focused on people that were either attending these events or people that were connected with those attending these events, and they were selling this information, whether it was to law enforcement or data brokers. This is now stopped, but this is something that you have to think about. So if you're going to be attending some type of political event and you're putting it on your own name when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, how is that going to be trailed with you for the rest of your life? Let's say, for example, you want to run for political office or you're going to be nominated for a seat on the Supreme Court. Everything that you're doing as a kid has the potential to be tracked and then be used against you. And that sounds to me crazy, but after we've seen over the last couple of days with, for those of you who are following what's going on with the Supreme Court nomination, when reporters start taking a look at the fact that what you said in your yearbook is now being scrutinized, this is just something to be aware of, the fact that everything that you're doing, no matter how far back it is, has the ability to then affect what you're going to be doing in the future. So it's just something to be aware of. Yes?
So I hear what you're saying, and I think as parents, we get the message. The question is, how do we communicate that message to the kids and make it real for them? because I can say it, I can show it, we can talk about it, and in that moment, everyone gets it. But the minute they're away from you, you find out that someone was posting something that really they should not be posting.
That's an excellent question, and as a parent myself, it literally comes down to repetition. I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's repetition, and just like anything else, when you want to try to teach your child something, at least for me, from my personal experience, I have 2 kids, and I have to tell them a whole bunch of times, and the fact is, they'll touch the stove, they get burned, okay? Not once, not twice, 3 or 4 times before they realize, no, there's consequences. And that's why I really believe the fact that, hey, look, kids should get a second, third, fourth chance, and especially with what they're posting. That's why, to prevent something like that from happening, I highly recommend, I'll talk about it a little bit later, something called Finsta or fake Instagram or social media accounts. Because granted, we don't want our children to post dumb stuff or retweet things that are going to get them in trouble. Kids are going to do it anyway. I know it. And my feeling is that the best way to protect them is make sure they understand how to do it in a way that's not going to come back and destroy their lives. So as a parent, that's what I've seen. And for my clients, kids are going to do it no matter what. It's kind of like sex, okay? Some people were against having condoms in schools. Some of the services I provide, you got to think about it as a digital condom. The fact that, hey, look, kids are going to do things that you might not agree with. They're going to do it. As a kid, I know I did things that my parents didn't agree with, but they're going to do it anyway, and the best thing to do is try to help them and educate them as much as possible. That's just how I feel. So a lot of people here may have heard about the issues with Facebook and the data issues with the election, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, so I'm going to move on from that. Now, this is a situation, this is what happens when you post too much personal information online. Pedophiles will take that information and they'll use it. And in this instance, this is a very problematic situation where you had a family, a family had posted too much personal information about themselves. And then what happened was that a pedophile took that information and started trading that information, tied naked images to this family. And then the FBI got involved, and the FBI ended up arresting an older brother. They thought that this older brother was abusing his younger brother based on the fact that some third-party pedophile had taken their information, and this family was in major legal trouble, and they had to figure out how to defend themselves. And it turned out that they were able to prove that, hey, look, their personal information was stolen from their social media profiles and then repurposed in a way they never envisioned. So if you're not afraid of the privacy issues, think more about the safety issues and the legal issues involved. Because posting too much information has the ability to put you in major legal hot water, and you can run up major legal bills and you can go to jail. And this family was, literally they were terrorized over this situation. So this is just something to think about. Immigrants, our area has a large immigrant population. And according to the New York Times, immigrants who are coming in the country are now going to have to end up providing their social media profile information to the government. So this is another reason why it's best when you're growing up to limit your digital information, because, hey, look, the things that you say when you're young, they can get you in a lot of trouble. And whether or not you're for or against a certain political person or party, and you're posting it online and you're an immigrant, that could actually put your family in a whole lot of trouble, more so than you can ever imagine. Now, this is what I find absolutely, utterly disgusting and super troubling, is the fact that Facebook was telling advertisers that, hey, look, we know how to target your kids if they're depressed. And you have to remember, Facebook, it's just not Facebook. It's now, Facebook owns Instagram and WhatsApp. Instagram is the #2 most popular app, and teenagers are migrating big time from Facebook over to Instagram, and they're also using WhatsApp more and more. So you have to realize that it's not just Facebook, it's the companies that they own. For example, Facebook, they were fined $130 million from the European Union for intentionally lying about the type of information that they were sharing between WhatsApp and Facebook. Now, some of you might be saying, well, okay, this privacy stuff, who cares? Well, how is it actually affecting my back pocket, my pocketbook? And that is something I think might help people better understand it. This has financial repercussions. For example, Facebook reached out to insurance companies. They wanted to make sure, they wanted to have insurance companies price teenagers' auto insurance based upon their digital footprint. This was very troubling. Fortunately, so far, this has been stopped, but this could end up becoming a reality in the near future. And also, the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago came out, Facebook was reaching out to banks. Can you imagine if we end up having a system where everything that our kids are posting online affects whether or not they can get a student loan, or whether or not they can get a mortgage, or whether or not they can get auto insurance? This is happening. It's now. It's real. So parents need to be aware of it. Now, it's not just your social media information. It's also your Fitbit data. John Hancock Life Insurance, they want to try to push all of their policyholders to make sure that they get all of their Fitbit data. Can you imagine if a teen who was heavy while they were growing up? Can you imagine if that was held against them, if down the road the insurance company says, you know what, we have all this Fitbit data from you in high school, and we have this information from what you bought in the lunch line, and combined all that information together. This is something that has the potential to really create major problems. Also, as far as price discrimination, it's not just in insurance products, but I'll give you an example of what happened at Staples. I was using a VPN. I wanted to buy a software package. And so I took a look at the price. It said the price was $59. My VPN location was New Jersey. So I go to my local Staples store. I go to the Staples store. It said $99. Couldn't figure out what was going on. I said to the clerk, I said, hey, when I checked the price, it was $59. He's like, well, let's check it online. They checked it online in the store, $99. Go back home using my VPN or virtual private network, which masked my location. And with Staples, you have the ability to buy something and then pick it up an hour later. I paid the $59.99 that the cost, went to the store, picked it up. A couple hours later, the clerk who I had dealt with a couple hours earlier was shocked that I was able to get such a big discount. And he asked me why. I said, look, I understand how to protect my privacy. There's no reason why I should be paying an extra $40 for something when I don't have to. Why should you be discriminating against me based upon my location? So these things are happening, and they're happening now. Now, the question is, how can kids limit their digital footprint to stop being discriminated against? Well, there's a handful of ways you can do it. Number one, you can delete data. You can constantly delete your tweets or constantly delete the things that you post. But don't forget, once you've already posted it online, it has the ability to, other people can actually capture it and repost it. And I said before, I've had instances where the fact that just because you've deleted it doesn't mean a frenemy has taken it and actually is going to use it against you down the road and send it off to a college or to an employer and say, hey, look, this is what so-and-so posted 6 months or a year ago during a politically charged time or during a time that this person was depressed. So one thing is you can do is you can have your kids delete information. Another thing, like I said before, is I'm a big believer in Finsta or fake Instagram accounts. Unfortunately, our kids don't know how to create real fake or Finsta accounts. And you have some kids that are getting in trouble because they don't understand how to really create an account that cannot be tied back to them and be used against them. Look, former FBI Director James Comey was using a Finsta account, okay? A lot of professional people use Finsta or fake accounts. And it's something that our kids need to learn how to do, because that way they can still use all these cool technologies, but the information and their interactions will not then be used against them down the road to deny them and discriminate against them when they want to apply to college, apply for loans, or whatever. Another way is good old-fashioned self-control or discipline. As a parent, I'm a big believer in making sure that my kids understand the rules of the road. And every family is different, and there's no one-size-fits-all on what the rules of the road should be. It depends on age, depends on your family, depends on culture. There's cultural issues. So every family needs to make that determination for themselves. What's the best way for my son or daughter to make sure that they have the proper tools and they actually exercise them correctly? Another way is you just say no. I grew up in the 80s, and this was a big thing with the drugs. And those of you who don't know who this is, it's Doug Williams, former Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Redskins, and Nancy Reagan, our former First Lady. And it comes down to literally making sure that our kids understand the self-control aspect, but also having them say, you know what, I'm not going to post on a certain platform, or I'm not going to use the platform during X number of hours or whatever. So that's something that you have to make sure that your kid understands. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt. I think President Lincoln, and also it's attributed to Mark Twain, I think what they said 150 plus years ago has as much bearing back then as it does today. There was a question earlier about the fact that, hey, look, will I be discriminated against because I don't have a robust digital profile? No. There's plenty of things you can, if you really want to find something on somebody, you don't have to post all sorts of things on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. There's other ways to get that information. So if someone wants to find more information out about you, there are plenty of data points out about you. And the data brokers have literally thousands of data points on everyone in this country. So you don't need to have a social media profile to be successful. Can I clean up my child's personal digital profile? This is a question I get all the time, and some of the services I provide helps families do it, but there's a lot of companies out there that are intentionally lying to families and intentionally lying to the public about what they can and cannot do. In general, most of the so-called online reputation management companies act like, oh, we can basically make your child have this beautiful, robust profile without any negative things online, or we can take things off online so that way they can't find the negative stuff. Well, that is not true with a lot of the things these companies say, and if you take a look at their terms of service, what these companies also do is they require you to sign an arbitration agreement instead of actually going to court if you disagree. Because I've had several legal clients come to me and say, hey, Brad, I want to sue these online reputation management companies because they lied to me about what they can and cannot do. I take a look at the agreement. Oh, you can't sue them because the fact that you have to go into arbitration. So I've had clients that were out $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 because they trusted some of these companies. So as far as whether or not you can, it really depends. And does anyone here watch football? Okay, perfect. Erin Andrews, one of the most famous sportscasters out there. About 10 years ago, she was minding her own business inside of her hotel room, and she just got out of the shower, and she was doing her hair, putting her makeup on. She was totally buck naked, and some disgusting stalker went to the front desk, figured out what room she was in, literally went to her room, was able to take out the little peephole, take it out of there, put her cell phone up against the wall, up against the door, and filmed her totally buck naked. And then what he did was he tried to sell it. There were no buyers. So he just posted it online. That was 10 years ago. Since then, Miss Andrews has actually, she sued the hotel where it was. She won a big lawsuit. She has spent millions of dollars on legal fees and on online reputation management companies. If you did a search now, you put in the proper search terms, you can still find her, the nude images very quickly. It's right up there online. And so once something gets put up there, even if you spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars when companies try to remove content, it's near impossible to do so. Now, there's a form Instagram has. Is deleting personal information as easy as just filling out the form? No. Instagram and other companies, they will not, in general, delete information unless you really pester them or if you end up threatening to file some type of lawsuit. And even if you do that, a lot of times they won't delete the information because why? They don't have to. Under Section 230 of the CDA, the Communications Decency Act, most of the content posted online, unless there's copyright issues, and that's another law, unless it's sex trafficking or child pornography, these companies don't have to remove it. And in general, they don't. And there's no reason to. Why? Because controversy sells. More people that like or dislike or click on something, the more money they're going to make. Same thing with Google. Google has a form that supposedly allows you to try to remove content. It's very hard for them to get them to listen. So even though there's these forms online, a lot of times these forms don't work. Now, big problem here in the county, along with other areas, is it legal for teens to have sex and or sex with each other? As we all know, as within the last couple of weeks, the condoms have been distributed in the schools, and also we've had young people. They, besides having sex, they are also sexting each other, sending nude images. Now, this is a very troubling case that happened in Virginia. I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but basically the Virginia cops, what they wanted to do was try to prove that a young man, He was consensually sending nude images back and forth with his girlfriend, purely consensual. How many people here grew up in the 80s and saw the movie Porky's? Anyone? Yes, people are embarrassed to say that they have. Well, there's a scene in Porky's where they want to do a lineup to try to figure out what someone's personal private parts look like. And what did Virginia police want to do? They wanted to do a similar lineup. They wanted to literally require a young man to provide to literally compare the evidence from what was sent digitally to his physical private parts. So this is not something that's fake news. You can easily Google it and look it up. This happened. It happened down in Virginia. Now in Maryland, will teens be prosecuted for sexting and sending nude images? Will they? Does anyone here remember what happened several months back with the Rockville High incident with the alleged rape? Everyone? Yes. Well, it turned out the alleged rape was not an alleged rape. It was consensual sex between two boys and one female, one girl. So what happened was that they realized it made national news, and it turned out that, okay, Montgomery County prosecutors, they couldn't prosecute based on a rape that never happened. Instead, what they did was they prosecuted based on the fact that it was child pornography. Our kids need to know that if they're sending things back and forth, Montgomery County will prosecute for child porn. They've done it, and they will do it again. So even though kids are sending nude images, they have to understand that there's major legal repercussions for doing so. And you're not protected as a minor in Maryland. You're not protected anywhere. Under federal law, there is, it's considered child pornography. So for example, let's say someone sends you a nude image, and what happened in that case was that the girl, she consensually sent nude images to one of the boys. And one of the boys looked at it and sent it to his friend. And they went after, and they prosecuted based upon the fact that just the sending and the receiving. So if you receive any type of nude images from anyone who's a minor, I highly recommend that you delete it right away. Do not send it, do not hold it on your phone or other digital device. And another related issue is revenge porn. That, for those of you who don't know what revenge porn is, it's basically when someone takes an image, a naked image of yourself or someone else, and they send it to other people, and the person who actually is the person who's naked in the image doesn't consent to that. It's a growing problem. There's a lot of states now have laws on the books, but it still doesn't help resolve the problem. Kids need to understand sending naked images has lifelong repercussions. Now, Facebook and Google, they're notorious for this. They're notorious for funding so-called social media experts. I've never received a nickel from Facebook and Google. In fact, I've gone up against them numerous times, and state legislatures testified against them. They've testified against the privacy and the kids' digital mental health issues that I have proposed. And what happened was, for example, Facebook came out last year with Facebook Messenger for Kids. Has anyone heard of it? Well, what Facebook didn't tell other people was the fact that the experts who they relied on, they were actually being funded by Facebook. Facebook didn't want everyone to know that the organizations who were receiving their funds were also the same organizations that were giving it glowing reviews. And then with Google, what Google did, they were funding a think tank downtown, and the think tank came out with a report which Google did not like, basically saying that Google was doing a lot of bad things. So what Google did was they made sure that the person that was behind it was fired. So you have to realize that organizations that take money from Facebook or Google, they have limitations. They're not going to give our kids the information they sorely need to make sure that they understand all the issues that take place in the digital space. For example, this was a rating that an organization that likes to rates different websites, they're compromised by the fact that they take money from Mark Zuckerberg's nonprofit arm. So, I mean, I don't know how anyone could ever give Facebook a 4 out of 5 on what they do, and the fact that they didn't say anything about it. There's a ton of stuff on the platform that they only gave it a 1 star as far as there's a bunch of other potential up to like 5 stars on how much sex is on there. I went to the Marine Corps last year to help them get out of an issue. It was called Marines United, where there was a problem where a lot of Marines were posting a lot of very derogatory things about women, and a lot of naked images and revenge porn were posted on Facebook's platform. And that made national news over a year and a half ago. I took these screenshots yesterday. So you have to think that whatever organization you're bringing into your schools, they're clouded by who's funding them. Now, my feeling is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. What Benjamin Franklin said 275 or whatever years ago, I think still has a lot of weight today, because my feeling is that it's always best to be proactive in this space. Limiting your teen's digital footprint, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to make sure that everything that they're doing while they're a teen does not come back to harm them in the future. There's no reason why a kid who was angry about who won a presidential election or angry about who was nominated for the Supreme Court, why their anger or why their feelings should then be used against them 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Kids should be provided the opportunity to make decisions, make mistakes, and not have it trail them forever. And that's why I do the types of things that I do. Now, some of the things that, the ways to help stop this is make sure that your kids have the proper privacy settings in place. You also want to make sure you're constantly clearing out their cookies on their computer. Also, a big thing is Finsta accounts or fake Instagram accounts, like I said. Then for those of you who don't know what virtual private networks are, be careful about which one you use, because Facebook was caught. What they did was they actually released a so-called VPN that was actually tracking the people who they were supposedly protecting. I believe it was called ANOVA. And so they were using that information for nefarious purposes. So not all VPNs are alike. I have on my website VPN that I trust. Also use DuckDuckGo instead of Google. For those of you who don't know what DuckDuckGo is, it's a search engine just like Google, but they don't track you. And you can also reach out to me at Digital Armor. Now, what I want to do is literally partner with MCPS families and PTAs to help educate and empower our families and also our students in the digital age, because I feel like it's something that's not being done. Our kids are not getting the information that they need. I actually had some students from one of our local high schools reach out to me last week with one of the local student newspapers, and I started asking them, I go, what's happening this year? They said absolutely nothing. They're not getting the information they need to help protect them from when colleges and employers, when they're actually going out looking for a job. So what I want to do is provide fundraising opportunities. I want to work with PTAs, providing fundraising opportunities and providing discounts to PTA members. I think it's very important to create some type of win-win situation through online courses, through workshops, and also personalized products and services. For example, I have a product where I can actually figure out what a college or an employer can find out about a student. It's very strong, powerful. It's a very strong and powerful search product that enables me to figure out what actually a kid is saying online or an adult, and then I'm able to take that information and then help make sure that a student it's not being used against them. Also, I have online courses, and that's something where I want to provide partnerships also with PTAs and parents. So, as I see time is running short, does anyone have any questions or any more concerns that they want to ask me? And yes.
So if we want our kids to use a Finsta instead of their personal Instagram account, but they've already been using Instagram or these other services, how do you transition from the real account to the fake account?
Well, it depends on how much information they've already put down. You got to ask yourself which email address they've used. You got to ask yourself, for example, what phone number they've used. You might want to encourage them to start a new account, scrub the old account. It just depends. Every situation is slightly different, because it could be your child has posted nothing of any concern, or it could be your child maybe has posted some things that could create some concern. It's not just the images, it's also the metadata behind the images, meaning that the time and place that they took the photo. So it's not just what you see, it's also what you don't see, which can then be used against your child in the future when they're going for college, applying to college, or when they're going for a certain job. Any other questions? Yes.
So with the Finsta, what's the guarantee that this won't ever be traced back to your child?
There's no guarantee for anything, but kids are using these platforms. And the best thing to do, it's like a condom. There's no guarantee that a female is not going to get pregnant when a condom is used. However, it increases the chances that there won't be a pregnancy or there won't be an STD. So think of a Finsta as a digital condom, and other types of advice that I'm providing. Think of it as, hey, look, nothing is foolproof. However, it's better to do something than nothing.
So one of the things that's changing in the industry, this is part of what I work in, California passed a data privacy law, which takes effect in 2020, that closely mirrors the general data protection regulations from the European Union. I would expect companies to, as they comply with the California law, to not distinguish between California citizens and those of other states. And that would give people a lot more rights to delete data, to know what a company has about them. There's a lot of stuff about collecting about children. So I think this is really, in a lot of ways, going to change for the positive.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. The problem with the California law is that lobbyists right now are making Swiss cheese out of it. And there's a certain period of time where lobbyists are now trying to do everything they can to weaken that law. And I believe tomorrow there's a hearing on the Hill, either tomorrow or later in the week, on creating some type of national privacy law. But what's going to happen is that, first of all, there's no privacy advocates that were invited to the first hearing. And the type of laws that they're talking about really are not going to do a lot to really protect our kids, because these companies are still collecting the data. The ed tech that is out there, to literally violate FERPA, there is almost no repercussions for a company to violate FERPA, or for a school or whomever to violate FERPA. There just isn't. It just hasn't. That's the problem. I wish there was, but there isn't. That's why I've done what I've done, try to advocate, and I actually represent people who've had issues in this space. Yes.
All right.
I just wanted to echo a lot of what you've said. I'm actually a college professor, and one of the things I actually have my students do is we follow each other on Twitter. Part of it is because I get a lot of notices about fellowships, scholarships, jobs, things like that. But also my eyes have been opened to how much discretion our students do not have. And I talk to them, and it's kind of the Wild West, and their parents have not really worked with them to think about how this is happening. So now I am literally bringing recruiters to talk to them about what happens with all this beautiful data that's out there and how it can affect them. Particularly, I'm in Russian studies. So yeah, I'll be honest, a lot of the good jobs in my area require security clearance, and it's DC. So, you know, it's kind of stressful when I bring my speakers and they say, and by the way, if you put it on Twitter now and I have to give you a security clearance, like, we really take it seriously if it's less than 2 years old, which for them is an eternity. So it's, you know, something to really talk to them about, that it's not just, I mean, the security, et cetera, but also they can't take advantage of the positive sides of this if they're not being wise in their use.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So these are some of the many issues that are affecting our kids in the digital space, and any way that I can help PTA members and families, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Brad Shear. You can reach me at digitalarmoredgroup.com. You can call me at 301-652-3600. I've left information over there on the side table. And I want to thank MCCPTA for inviting me here this evening. And once again, thank Aaron Clegg and Lynn Harris and Tracy Potts and the rest of the MCCPTA staff for inviting me here today. Hopefully I'll be back soon. I'll be in the system for another 11 years. So I look forward to speaking with many of you again in the near future. Once again, thank you for your time this evening, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate you being here.